A landmark nuclear deal implemented, a $400 million payment delivered, and 4 Americans released. First reported by the Wall Street Journal, all of the events transpired between the U.S. and Iran the very same day in January. U.S. Marine Amir Hekmati, Washington Post reporter Jason Rezaian, Pastor Saeed Abedini, and Nosratollah Khosravi Roodsari were all released on January 17th. That's the exact same day an unmarked cargo plane delivered the first installment of $1.7 billion in cash on a pallet. And I'm joined now by Mark Toner, the deputy spokesman at the State Department. Mark, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
This report raising lots of questions. The Republican National Committee just issued this statement a little while ago. I'll read it to you, part of it at least. The Obama-Clinton foreign policy not only means cutting a dangerous nuclear deal with the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism, it also means paying them a secret ransom with cargo planes full of cash. This reckless arrangement is not only a major breach of longstanding U.S. policy, it also means millions of dollars potentially finding their way into the pockets of terrorist organizations while putting a price on the head of every American. Lots of questions raised, Mark. Why wasn't Congress made aware of the specifics of this arrangement?
Well, in fact, it's hard to know where to begin with that statement, Wolf. First of all, this was no ransom. It was a settlement for an outstanding claim in the Hague Tribunal that had been established, let's be clear, in 1981 to resolve any outstanding claims between the U.S. and Iran, and was simply not linked in any way, shape, or form to the release of those detained Americans.
So why wasn't
linked to the Iran nuclear deal? Sure,
excuse me for interrupting. Why wasn't Congress informed of the specifics of the arrangement?
Well, again, I would take objection to that. And even publicly, the president and Secretary of State Kerry were out within hours of when this arrangement was made, the settlement concluded, talking about it publicly. Certainly, Congress was informed on the details prior to the settlement.
Because a lot of the members of Congress say they repeatedly asked, including chairman of the relevant committees, repeatedly asked for these specifics. They weren't informed, and we weren't informed that $400 million in foreign currency in euros, Swiss francs, was being flown to Tehran, delivered in a private unmarked plane, exactly the same time these American hostages were released. You're saying that was totally coincidental?
Well, look, a couple of points there to make. One is I really can't speak to the mechanics of how the settlement was made, except I would only underscore to your viewers and to the American people that it's important to acknowledge the reality of Iran's financial connections to the global financial network, or financial system, rather, at the time the settlement was made. And it was not an easy thing to do to make this settlement. It was disconnected, if you will, and remains somewhat disconnected from the global financial network, or system, rather.
The State Department does consider Iran the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. Is that right?
That is correct. And again, we've made no claims otherwise. And in fact, President Obama, others have said that we still don't expect, or don't see, rather, any change in Iran's behavior as a result of the nuclear agreement. But a couple of points here. One is, this nuclear agreement was never meant to solve all of our problems with Iran. Those problems persist. But what it did do was it took a significant problem off the table, and that was Iran's pursuit of a nuclear weapon. And that has, and we stand by that, that has been taken off the table by the Iran nuclear agreement. And Iran has abided by that. Please, go ahead.
The longstanding U.S. policy is not to pay ransom for the release of Americans being held by terrorist organizations. Has that policy changed?
Not at all, Wolf. And thank you for giving me the opportunity again to stress there was no ransom here. What we saw was, frankly, the culmination of several different lines of effort, but they were separate. And I can't underscore this enough. There was the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear agreement. There was the release of the American detainees. And then finally, there was the resolution of this claim of the Hague Tribunal. That, by the way, saved American taxpayers $1 billion or billions of dollars in interest. But let me make it. Please, go ahead.
Are there any restrictions on how the Iranians can use that $400 million?
I can't speak to what restrictions there may be that may be in place regarding that. That is Iran's money. But what we have seen, and I think some American or U.S. officials have spoken to this, is that the money has not been used, that as far as we can see, for any nefarious purposes. It's been used for infrastructure improvement, development projects, et cetera. We haven't seen it used. Now, we can't rule that out, again, because we've seen Iran continue to exercise bad behavior in the region. We can't change that overnight.
They're still providing military financial aid to the Bashar al-Assad regime, to Hezbollah, to other groups the U.S. considers to be terrorist organizations, right?
That is correct. We've seen that behavior continue. But again, this was a settlement of a claim that, frankly, had the tribunal settled it, might have gone more in Iran's favor and cost the American taxpayers more money. These are claims that are outstanding from the downfall of the government in 1979. This tribunal was set up in place. And another point to underscore that has been lost in all of this, there's been over 4,700 claims settled on behalf of American citizens and American companies to the tune of several $billion. That's important. This is a two-way street here.
The whole notion of the $1.7 billion that the U.S. is paying Iran, has the rest of that 1.3 already been transferred as well?
I can't speak to whether that's been finalized. It's really out of our hands here at the State Department. What I can say is we'll abide by our commitments, and we will fulfill them.
The Iranians themselves say you paid ransom, the United States paid ransom for the release of those Americans. Are they lying?
Well, I think the source of that comment was an Iranian military commander who has probably his own reasons for putting forth that kind of claim. He's playing for domestic audiences. All I can say is, and I would hope that, people would trust in what the president has said, what the Secretary of State has said, versus an Iranian military commander.
And so just to wrap it up, Mark, the fact that the Americans were released exactly at the same time as that plane arrived from Switzerland with $400 million in hard currency and cash, that was totally coincidental.
What I'll say is, because of the Iran nuclear agreement, that opened up the space to settle this claim and also to confirm or to get the release of these American detainees. But it's really important to stress here that these were all separate processes. And in fact, the Hague Tribunal claims process had been gone on for decades, years. And in fact, we were able to bring it to a successful conclusion, but there was no linkage. There was no ransom. Well,
I guess the bottom line question then is, if you had not delivered that $400 million on that day, exactly at that time, would those American detainees, hostages, have been released on that day?
Yes, we believe so, because that was working through a different process, and it was concluded successfully. Again, because of the space that our negotiations with the Iranians had opened up in other areas.
Mark Toner is the deputy spokesman for the State Department. Mark, thank you very much.
Thank you.